If you own a Ryker, then you've probably noticed that when you're going around corners, that the bike can feel a bit top-heavy. This uncomfortable feeling is even more prominent when riding with the passenger. Now this is because the factory sway bar, it allows the bike's body to roll more, which can create a feeling of floatiness or sloppiness in the handling. In addition to that, the factory sway bar end links are made of plastic, which can flex under spirited riding, affecting overall ride quality. To address this issue, we've partnered up with the team over at Baja Ron to bring you an aftermarket performance sway bar and replacement aluminum end links. The sway bar itself is constructed from one piece of spring steel with no bends. This straight bar design ensures a consistent diameter along its entire length. This design drastically improves the responsiveness of the bike and makes the Ryker feel more agile when cornering or at high speeds. The sway bar also features Delrin bushings. Delrin is a high-strength plastic that's resistant to wear, corrosion, and deformation. You'll also get 2 billet aluminum arms, one on either side. These arms are available in several different colors to complement your Ryker's color profile. Once you upgrade your sway bar, you'll want to swap out the factory plastic end links with something a bit more robust. So we also have Baja Ron billet aluminum end links that feature chromoly rod ends, aluminum spacers, and self-lubricating bearings. The end links are also available in several different colors to complement your sway bar arms. If you want to take a deeper dive into the details of what an upgraded sway bar and end links can do for you, check out our Q&A with Daniel from Baja Ron, who came out to shoot this installation video on one of our shop Rykers. Now let's get started.
Before you begin, make sure that your engine has had adequate time to cool, your bike is on level ground, and that your parking brake is engaged. Chalk the rear tire and use a floor jack centered underneath the steel frame so that you can lift your Ryker to a comfortable working height. Then place 2 jack stands underneath the tubular frame members, one on each side of the bike. Make sure your Ryker is stable before you begin the installation process. Locate the 2 plastic tabs nearest the front corners of the hood, then lift up and release both tabs at the same time so that you can slide your hood forward to remove it. Use a T30 Torx wrench to remove the 2 screws on the underside of the front fascia. Please note that some Ryker models have push pins in this location instead of screws. In that scenario, you would use a push pin removal tool to remove the 2 push pins. Now carefully pull back on one side of the front end to release this plastic tab so that you can unhook the corner of the front fascia from the bike. Then do the same for the other side. Pull back to release the tab and unhook the corner. Then pull forward to completely remove the body panel from the bike. Use a 10mm socket with ratchet to remove these 2 radiator bolts along with any aftermarket radiator guard you may have installed. Put the factory hardware aside as it will be reused. Then reach around the radiator and disconnect the fan plug. There are 2 rubber grommets on the underside of the radiator that are seated into the frame. Carefully but firmly pull the bottom of the radiator up to release the rubber grommets from the frame. Carefully lift your radiator up and lay it on the front edge of the Ryker, and secure it into place with a bungee cord. Use a 10mm wrench and a 10mm socket with ratchet to remove the 2 bolts holding on your factory end link, so that you can remove it from the bike. Then repeat on other side. Please note that the factory hardware will be reused. Use a 10mm wrench and 10mm socket with ratchet to remove the bolts holding in the 2 factory sway bar bushings. There's 2 bolts holding in each bushing. Do one side at a time and remove the upper bolt first. The factory bolts and nuts will be reused. Once all 4 bolts are removed, you can remove the 2 clamshell-style bushing blocks from the factory sway bar. Next, we'll need to remove the front shock on one side of the bike. Use a 15mm wrench and 15mm socket with ratchet to remove the lower shock bolt first. You may need to lift up the wheel slightly to relieve stress on the lower bolt as you remove it. Once the bolt is removed, slowly allow the wheel to articulate down towards the ground. Then remove the upper shock bolt and nut, making sure to support the shock in one hand as you remove the bolt. Please note that the factory hardware will be reused. Zip tie your brake line and any aftermarket wiring to the upper A-arm. Wrap masking tape around your upper and lower A-arm to protect the paint. Then slide your factory sway bar as far as it will go towards the side of the bike that you're working on. Next, we'll need to cut off one end of the factory sway bar so that we can remove it from the bike. The manufacturer recommends using an angle grinder with a 4.5-inch steel cutoff wheel. If you do not have access to one, you can also use a low-profile hacksaw with proper steel cutting blade. Whatever tool you decide to use, make sure that your brake line and any wiring is safely out of the way. Install protective eyewear and cut the sway bar near the pinch point located here. Please note that after cutting, the end of the sway bar will be hot to the touch and may have sharp edges. Carefully remove it from the frame, sliding it out the opposite side. Cut the zip tie we fastened earlier and remove the masking tape from your A-arms. Slide your new Baja Ron sway bar through the center of the wheel hub. On the side of the bike, we removed the shock. It's important to make sure that the bushing blocks are installed correctly onto the sway bar. The included left and right side bushing blocks are not interchangeable. They are labeled as though you're facing the Ryker from the front. The tapered end of each block should be facing towards the center of the sway bar, and the labels should be facing down towards the ground. If we look at it from an overhead view, you'll notice that the two pinch points on the sway bar are facing up towards the sky, so that they align with the slit in each bushing block. Slide the correct bushing block onto the end of the sway bar until it contacts the pinch point on the sway bar. Then align the bushing block holes with the frame holes and reinstall the factory hardware finger tight for now. Now reinstall your shock with the factory hardware, starting with the upper bolt first, finger tight for now. Then lift the wheel up so that you can line up and reinstall the lower shock bolt. Top it off with the factory nut, finger tight for now. Then go back through and tighten both the upper and lower shock bolts down to the manufacturer recommended torque spec. Use an 1/8-inch Allen wrench to remove the bolt at the end of one of the included billet aluminum arms and set the bolt aside for now. Then use a flat blade screwdriver bit or something similar as a wedge, so that you can carefully spread apart the hex side of the arm using a rubber mallet. Properly orient the arm with the pointed end of the arm facing towards the rear of the Ryker and with the engraving facing out towards the wheel. Then carefully slide the aluminum arm onto the sway bar as far as it will go. The sway bar should protrude slightly beyond the arm. Then pull out the wedge. Add removable thread lock to the threads on the end of the bolt we removed from the arm earlier, and pass it down through the unthreaded portion of the pinch hole on the aluminum arm, so that it can thread into the lower section. Then use an 1/8-inch Allen wrench to snug the bolt down and into place. Then repeat on other side. Now it's time to install the sway bar end links. The two Baja Ron end links are identical, so they can be used on either the left or right side of the bike. Take one of the factory end link bolts, add a spacer, then an end link, then another spacer, and insert the top bolt into position and reinstall the factory nut, finger tight for now. Please note that the top of the end link fastens to the outside of the sway bar arm. Then insert the remaining end link bolt to attach the bottom of the end link, making sure that you insert a spacer on each side of the end link before reinstalling the factory nut on the back side. Finger tight for now. Then repeat this process for the other end link. Be sure that your sway bar is centered and both end links are vertical, and go back through and tighten down all 4 end link bolts and all 4 bushing block bolts down to the manufacturer recommended torque spec. Carefully lower your radiator back down and into place, ensuring that the rubber grommets on the bottom of the radiator insert back into the frame holes. Reattach the fan connector and use a 10mm socket with ratchet to reattach the 2 factory radiator bolts along with any aftermarket radiator guard you may have purchased previously. Reattach your front fascia, making sure to hook the plastic tabs on both the left and right side back into place. Then reinstall the factory hardware on the underside of the body panel and tighten down with a T30 Torx wrench. Again, some of you may have push pins in this location. Reinstall your hood, ensuring that the plastic locking tabs are latched into place. Lastly, remove your jack stands, carefully lower your Ryker to the ground, and remove the rear wheel chock.
Now, if upgrading your Can-Am Ryker sway bar and end links is on your mod list, head over to slingmods.com and make sure to like and subscribe to get more cool content just like this. I'm Jen, signing out until next time.